From the Philadelphia area demonstrate for us, and you're going to see a unique demonstration tonight because he turns wood in a manner unlike anything that I've ever seen before, and I suspect that many of you have not seen anything quite like it before. These are Woodturners, and if you look at them, you wouldn't believe that came off a lathe, but it did, and he's going to show us how he does it. Derek has always been interested in art, and his driver is artwork, but his vehicle is the lathe, and you're going to see some unique stuff tonight. Thanks, Derek.
Thank you, Tom.
Now, he's from Pennsylvania, is that right?
No, that's the middle of the state.
He's from Pennsylvania, Western Nebraska.
Well, I'm close. I'm right on the border of Pennsylvania. So I'm going to do a demonstration on multi-axis turning tonight. My turning is a little bit different than everybody else's, and my interest in what I'm going to demonstrate, I don't want to show you guys how to make a bird or a elephant, or well, maybe. I don't want to show you how to I don't want to show you how to make a bowl, a perfect bowl, or a bat, or a cable leg, or any one specific thing. My interest in this demonstration is to, I want to show how this machine cuts, and I want to show how broad the way that you can use it is in describing anything. So instead of me determining what I'm going to demonstrate for you, this demonstration, I'm going to take a suggestion, I'll cherry pick, and I'm going to turn that on the spot. And the only reason I cherry pick is certain animals and certain things are better than others. But anything that you feel really shouldn't be turned, animal or thing, feel free to suggest some. Mostly animals, but I'm okay with things. And then we'll figure one out and we'll do that.
How about a sandhill crane?
Well, I didn't bring a birding book.
How about a prairie dog?
Bulldog.
Prairie dog might be an option. I kind of like the idea of a prairie dog.
Bulldog.
A walrus? A walrus is good too. An elk. Okay. So we have.
What did you say, Clem?
Yeah, we can pick.
Bulldog.
Bulldog's an option too.
Can you combine all of those?
Speaking of that, so I was down in Texas, and they asked me to do a jackalope. Are you guys familiar with that? Yeah. So they're not around Pennsylvania. I've never seen one of them.
They're from Wyoming native.
I think I ran into the black-eared ones down in Texas. Anyway. I turned that. I actually turned a jackalope. So I'm pretty open to ridiculous things. But I kind of like the idea of, so prairie dogs, that's the only, so I came out to Colorado thinking, there's so much amazing wildlife out here. And then Camille's like, well, there's prairie dogs. and I didn't even know there were prairie dogs out. That's certainly the last animal that I thought of when I thought of Colorado. But it's the only one that I've seen of any note. So I could think about doing a prairie dog. I think I would want to do it. I want to do a prairie dog, or I'm also open to doing a walrus.
Antelope.
Or an elk.
Or a great horned owl?
Hold on, let me look at an elk. I mean, I know roughly what an elk looks like. The only problem with an elk is those horns.
You do a cow elk.
A what?
Cow elk. Cow, they don't have horns.
Well,
Marvin.
hold on.
A bonobo.
A bonobo would actually be very good, but they have that big nose, don't they?
Yeah. Rattlesnake.
Hold on.
Bad.
Hold on, guys. Hold on. I'm debating between an elk Well, let me look at prairie dog too. I kind of.
English.
See, but there's so many animals that are good from around here, so I really like picking an animal that's, if I can, appropriate to the area.
Yeah, how about a pit pointer?
A what?
A pit pointer.
What's a pit pointer?
Max.
Max.
No.
No, how about
Longhorn sheep.
No.
longhorn sheep?
Coyote.
Pronghorn.
Probably. Wait.
Black bear.
That's true.
Wait, what kind of sheep?
Bighorn.
Bighorn?
Right there.
Yeah, we've already done that,
Yeah, but that's not really a
kind of.
bighorn. It's more like a Cape Buffalo.
That's regular. That's Kansas land there.
Not good.
Hold on.
No, but the nose though does say the Cape Buffalo.
Let's do a bighorn. Let's do a real bighorn.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah, the horns are compact in.
Yeah, I think a bighorn would actually be pretty excellent. Okay, now, there's a caveat. So the first time I ever did this demonstration, I was very excited to show off this particular demo, thinking, you know what, I'm going to take these suggestions, I'm going to make that animal. I felt like I had that enough of an understanding and a skill set. I did just say this was the first time I did this demonstration. That was the first time I did this demonstration. So they asked for a horse, and I thought, you know, great, perfect. That's an animal that conjures an idea for everybody. And that's a very important part when you're using a machine to describe something that's not quite accurate. It has to be kind of visually distinct, and even if it's a little bit abstract, like, it still communicates that idea. Anyway, they asked for a horse, good thing. And as I'm turning it, this horse is getting, well, it never even got to a horse. It was just a pig. And it was, the more I worked on it, the more pig-like it got. And it really, I was stressed and flustered, but then I thought about it for a moment. I looked at it, and I thought, you know, this actually is a really nice pig. So I'm like, guys, you know, I'm really sorry this isn't a horse, but this is perhaps the most charming pig you'll ever see turned. And they were fine with it.
Were
Thankfully.
you demoing in Iowa?
No. Why? What's with Iowa?
We like pigs. Pigs make us money, horses don't do anything.
No, it was in New York, and they didn't. It's actually very close to Saratoga Springs, so they would have liked to have seen a horse. So what I'm trying to say is this bighorn could perhaps end up being a pig tonight, or a prairie dog. Yeah. It would have to go pretty far off the rails for a bighorn to end up being a prairie dog. Okay, so here's my marker here. Let me just pull up a picture again too. I can kind of picture things pretty clearly, but it's always nice to have that image right in front of you. So you guys all know what
Yeah.
just in case. And I think, and their ear kind of like sticks out through there. Kind of bulbousy eyes. Did someone say like a pig? I heard it. You've never seen me demonstrate.
Like an Iowa pig to me.
I can already tell this is going to be a difficult demonstration. No, it's great. So growing up in Pennsylvania and learning in Pennsylvania, there was a lot of wood clubs, and part of being at a wood club is getting that rapport with the audience is good. So getting teased a little bit always never Never made for a bad demonstration. Okay, so now we have to think about how to actually make a shape kind of like that in this piece of wood. So we're going to kind of like block off this whole area here. So let's think about the piece of wood like this. And we're going to put the horns, you know, first it'll be like we'll turn them this way, and then we'll turn out a little part here, and we'll see perhaps if we can separate them then from the head. But anyway, first we're just going to set it like this, and we're going to turn this part off. Pretty simple stuff. And then you know, we'll see how off-axis that is. If this is really jumping a lot, we'll take weight off. We'll do these horns first. We'll kind of like establish circles on the sides of the head, and then we'll do this. So there's some kind of basic things about multi-axis work that that you have to think about. And the most fundamental aspect of multi-axis work is whatever you want to get rid of, you put the centers as far away from that point as you can, within reason. So I want to turn, again, this part here, which is like the profile of that head. So the farthest point would actually be the centers would be all the way down here. And then I definitely won't touch any of the parts that I want to keep. But if I had the center here, I can get rid of all of this, and I'm not going to bother any of this part down here that I'm planning on coming back and getting rid of. So you try to keep it as balanced as you can while getting rid of the part that you want to get rid of. So we're just going to bounce it up a little bit. You know, I'm thinking about it, and I think really the best way will be kind of just establishing the beginning of those horns first. So we're starting off weird with this one. And it's really just a matter of cutting off all the parts that aren't a bighorn sheep at this point. Well, but really, I'm doing it this way because it's going to get rid of this weight that's going to be problematic. And
Did you guys bolt the lathe down?
Do you dance with your lathe, or does it dance by itself?
my lathe is bolted down because I've done some really, I've made some very questionable decisions at the lathe. No, believe it or not, as a quick demonstration, hold on, let me make sure this is tight. So I just use safety centers, and the reason I do is because I can do that type of thing. So a safety center is just a center that doesn't have any teeth to it. The friction is fine. I turn very slowly, and those two things working together keep me out of an enormous amount of trouble. It also makes my cuts less smooth and kind of, because I'm turning slower and I'm still kind of moving at a similar pace, you see those striated cuts. And I actually have decided that they add authenticity to the work. Like, people don't doubt that it's turned anymore when they look at the surface, because to carve all those concentric lines on a piece would be impossible. Okay, so let me stop talking for a minute. Let me actually start these horns. So the one thing that you can't do while doing multi-axis work is you can't ever ride a bevel. So already, just from jump, something very fundamental is taken away from you. But so what I do when I turn is I kind of pretend like I'm riding a bevel. I present the tool to the work as if it was about to be cutting that way. But you can't lay it on it and then, you know, pull up as you normally would and engage. you have to get up very close and then just ease into the cut. It's really the only way to do it. And the nice thing is, if you don't ease in, it just catches and it stops, and nothing really bad happens. And I've turned some much bigger pieces of wood in much more eccentric cuts, and I've never felt like that safety center couldn't couldn't help me remove the wood that I needed to. It might be slow, but I'm a very slow turner, but I'm an extremely fast shaper or carver, and that was kind of always my interest. And it will let you know when it doesn't want to go any faster. I think for some turners, that safety center, the fact that you can't really take a hard cut either, or the friction just will not hold, and especially on wet wood. Now, sometimes during a demonstration, and sometimes even when I'm turning as well, depending on how wet the wood is, I'll actually blowtorch right where that center is if I'm not getting the traction that I want it to. And it will dry that little area out a little bit more, and it'll just give you a little bit more grip. So I just want to look and see. I mean, it's practically already around. I would say the typical piece that I do is about 5 to 20 axes. I would say I fall in that range usually, but I don't count. And really, that's never been my interest. It's just when it looks like that animal, then it's done. However many axes it took to get there is how I go about it. I know a lot of people are often asked, like, well, how do you must plan the whole thing out, like, how on earth do you do that? I don't. There's no, like, I may plan, okay, so I'm looking at that form and I know roughly the kind of cuts that I might be taking in some sequence to get to where I want to get to. And that's because I've been doing it for 10 years. But even still, like, by taking this suggestion from you guys, I did not have a preconceived cut order on how to make this piece. And it's just going to be, I'm actually actively problem solving this as I'm going. And I feel the important part of doing that is that it shows you that, I don't know, this machine can really do just about anything.
What kind of wood is that?
This is box elder, and I consider this one of my top 4 woods that I like to use. Sorry. My favorite is holly, and other woods are maple and cherry. These are all woods I like using. The reason because they're tight grained, and the grain is not too like the summer and winter growth is pretty similar. They're like kind of homogeneous in that way. If you were to turn something like ash or say locust or something along those lines, the fact that there's so much difference, it makes this a nightmare to turn because you are going to be going against the grain and you just can't avoid it. You can't turn with the grain in a reasonable way. So, a more homogeneous grain pattern is much better. And holly happens to be my favorite because I think it's the most homogeneous and it's a very white timber, so it's almost like parchment. So when I apply pigments, which I almost always do, they're really bright and it almost doesn't look like wood, but it does. the other thing that I feel like is very important, just in a habit kind of way, is to turn your speed reset all the way down to turn off, especially in this kind of work, because if you turn that on and say you're up at a speed that you shouldn't have been on a brand new axis with a much more eccentric type of cut, when you do that, it gets very dangerous. And I would imagine 9 times out of 10, I've never done it. I've never done it that many times. But any time that I have done that, the piece has flown out. Usually you're not standing there because your speed isn't right in front. So in this way, I'm just making the exact same cut, nothing really fancy. It's kind of a different thing though when you're actually like turning symmetry like this into a piece, because a lot of times it's not quite the same. But while Lathe is reasonably good at, or extremely good at making something 360 degrees symmetrical, it also is pretty good as to help aid a carver, or a shaper, or whatever you want to call yourself, sculptor, to aid importing bilateral symmetry into something. Because if you put your centers in a similar way, it's going to, like, that path can't be altered. It's going to cut at that axis, no matter what you do to it. One side or the other, it's going to be the same. It's just the shape and the depth of the cut those are the only factors you have. Part of it though is guaranteed. You have part of your choice other than how you've aligned it is being taken away from you. I have just a question. How many of you guys have done like multi-axis work? Couple? It's kind of back to that statement I was trying to make earlier. I feel like a lot of people feel like this type of thought process and this type of work is, I get it a lot that your brain just works differently than other people. But the thing is, I don't really feel that's true, because when I first started, actually I can add a little teaching aid to this. So when I first started, I picked a face because human beings are wired to pick faces out of everything. Like, we have actually a little bit of extra brain capacity for identifying faces. So I thought, okay, we're very familiar with human faces. Like, if I do a human face, you can kind of, well, let me just carefully draw this. Like, it's very easy to communicate a human face. Like, it takes nothing to, there's like an expression to that. So if you just have a mouth and some eyes, and I actually wanted to really go about it, and so I tried to turn, and I just wanted those essential 3 features and contained in something that was kind of head-like. So that was where I started. But you think, okay, well, how do you turn that? And really, I just had a piece, and I thought, okay, well, I'll turn a little, kind of like a long bead on it. And I thought if I turn it 90 degrees and then turn a profile, I'll kind of have like a nose that sticks out a little bit. And I couldn't even exactly picture that. I just had an inkling that that would work out. And then 10 years later of making cuts on assumptions and then monitoring how those cuts interacted, I built up kind of a language that lets me kind of describe a lot of things. But when I started, it was very, very, very basic. And it was really just me being curious and making a cut. So, if you were to just take, just like how I did, I just took this and rotated it, and then now I'm looking at it and seeing exactly what happened. It's just doing that a whole lot. So, I mean, anyone that were interested in kind of starting this, I just feel like if you were to take a piece and rotate it arbitrarily, make a cut, observe it, and then, do it for a very long time, I mean, I might be weird to have wanted to do that, but I don't think there's anything unique about me being able to. So I'm thinking, so if you guys can picture with me now, so what I'm establishing is there's horns on the side of the head. And I feel like they're going to have to proportionately, now this is me picturing things. I feel like they need to come in just a little bit more on both sides, and then we'll have the horns kind of sticking out an appropriate amount for a bighorn. It's funny that my ability to cherry pick animals though is getting harder because I've done so many, and I really like trying to do ones that I haven't done before. So I might need to come up with a new demonstration.
Have you done a bighorn before?
I have done one, but it wasn't quite like this one. One could, jump on the other side of the lathe and turn on that side. I oftentimes try to always work on this side of the lathe just because I'm not contending with this. And on top of that, you're using like the exact same body motions. You're not working either with your left hand or kind of a struggling, cramped right hand. Sometimes I do just work on that side, but I feel like it's almost always better to do it this way. Unless you take my hands on it and then I'll make you struggle and use the other hand. Okay, so that's reasonably similar. I don't think I own a ruler in my shop, and I certainly don't bring one to demonstrations. Okay, so we have that. Now, those are going to be the horns on the side of the head. Now let's establish that top part of the head here. And now we've taken off an awful lot of weight, so this eccentric cutting is going to be much easier than it was before. There's usually an axis at some point during this demonstration that people really are pretty certain that it's a very bad idea.
Earlier this time.
What's that?
It's coming earlier.
Well, you know what, here's something that I can do. And I think it's always smart to try to do it. So, again, what I'm really concerned about is not cutting off more than I want to, so I'm trying to present this part of the face as much as I can and get everything else out of the way. But I know I'm not going to mess with these horns in the back too much, so I can actually center that quite a bit.
Looks like you cut the horns off.
Really?
No.
Not yet. I'm not going to shift this into a pig yet.
Seriously, aren't they the most dominant feature of the head?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the parts that you have sticking out are, I guess a lot of that's going to go away.
Yeah.
That center part is going to go away.
Sure.
Oh, okay.
I was going to say, if I cut the horns away, I'm going to just walk out now.
That will be a prairie dog.
This is a prairie dog mound. So obviously, this axis just changed dramatically. Make sure that speed is all the way down. Make sure it spins freely, and I'm neurotic about tightening this. And the reason why is, well, I've got hit because one of these walked, but I think that was a number of problems. But I feel like Powermatic's one way is anything more anything contemporary. The tailstock is good enough to hold this stuff in place, but you should continue tightening it because there's vibration, and every time it vibrates, this is loosening in some way. And it'll loosen enough, and then it will hit something. So.
Put your mask on, Harry.
What's that?
I told Harry to get his mask on.
I'm not in line.
Yeah, he's not lying.
Don't worry about it.
Famous last words, Harry.
Okay, so now, let's get back to this. So now I'm going to turn kind of like this part here. And we'll have to come in here to kind of like liven up those horns, eyes, perhaps something on the snout here and then this lower. So I mean, I can already kind of picture the route it's taking. But at the same time, a big part of this process, so I was, when I mentioned that it was just me observing my cuts, I can guarantee you I was not clever enough to devise the work that I made. It's not like I picked a point, like it's not like I can picture how this is going to look. And none of my work has ever been that. It's not like I pictured it and then devised how to make it and then made it. So this kind of idea of perfection that I feel like a lot of people try to work with, they pick this point, they aim all of their efforts at that point, and I think cause a lot of stress and anxiety to try to get there, and then still kind of fall short of that mark. So it's a lot of stress and difficulty to do that, to work in that mindset of achieving perfection. But then the other thing about it, so you spend all that time, but wherever you decided that endpoint was going to be, you're just aiming at that. You're not deviating wildly from that. And I feel like it's self-limiting because that point that you're aiming at probably isn't perfect either. So now if you're building a bridge, you kind of have to really aim at that point. It's very important to get it just so. But with more artistic endeavors, it's okay to deviate wildly. It's okay to see something and say, hey, you know what, I just like that. And I mean, most of the biggest breakthroughs I've had in my work were just mistakes that I made and was open-eyed enough to say, hey, I actually like that. I would have never been clever enough to think of it on my own, but I was smart enough to identify it and then continue it in my work. That being said, like, but say if you're trying to do like segmented work, you don't have, this type of work gives me the ability to do that. If you're doing something like segmented work, for example, you need all that planning. Like you have to, like things have to be more in line and perfect. So kind of how I talked about during the critique about that big spectrum, we need it all. Like it's all important. I think that sometimes it would be, I think woodworkers, and I know I benefited from getting away from that idea of perfection sometimes. Okay, so I'm going to take that, you can actually draw on the marker.
Sure, that's going to turn out good, but you know, right now I'm no for saying what I think, and right now it looks to me like you screwed up a good piece of firewood.
Well, we'll see.
Apologize for that.
You know, I have to say, I don't think any piece I've ever turned has ended up totally as firewood. But I can carve too. I'll tell you what. If you can burn it if no one else decides that they want it here. Okay, I need to keep dropping that down. So the other thing that I feel like is pretty important, so you're kind of turning a lot, or you're shaping a lot blindly. Not completely, like you can still gain certain bits of information from this perspective while the machine is on. But it's not like carving traditionally where you can just watch what you're doing. No one ever just takes a chisel and just hammers a bunch with their eyes closed. This is a little bit like that. So there's also a lot of turning off and looking. Okay, and that's starting to hit the bottom, which is actually fine. I'm going to drop this just a hair farther so it's in line with this, but that's the line that I want.
So basically, you're cutting a lot to hope you can find the line that you're looking for.
Yeah, well, you just... because it's an interrupted cut, you remove wood a little bit faster. Now, I am turning slower, but you still remove wood quite fast. And there are just parts that you just can't recover from. You know, obviously, we all know that thing, like you take off a little bit too much and it's just, your ability to get to where you want to go just vanishes. I mean, we have a lot of wiggle room still here, but I don't want to put myself in a situation where I can't get this to a Bighorn sheet. But yes, essentially, just don't want to pick up more than you intended to. And I think the other way of looking at that is, I like when I'm putting a cut on something and I know roughly it's going to be somewhere, but it's kind of like spotting a cloud, and you see something that kind of reminds you of it, and then you leave it be. Okay, that's good. Now, we're going to drop it down. And bring this part up. So we're going to establish a little bit of this neck here, as well as the bottom of that head. And I'm picturing the horn is going to be roughly like that.
When you're in your shop doing this on your own, do you draw out on a piece of wood too?
Big time, yeah. And I actually kind of like the lines on it at times, because I cut like I really try not to treat any piece at this point as precious. So I use a marker instead of a pencil, because I'm not really worried about what this mark is. But at the same time, that's because my interest is in the shape, not necessarily the wood. Not to say that I don't care about being a wood artist, because you couldn't really make these forms and other things, you know, in other material the same way. So now I have two things I'm trying to avoid with this pronghorn here, or rather bighorn. I do not want it to turn into a pig, and I really do not want it to turn into firewood. Now, all of a sudden, it just seemed like when I tightened that, I wasn't sure if I bumped one of the things under these legs loose, because it just seemed to be wobbling much more all of a sudden. And also, I really try, if I can, to stand a little bit at a tangent to the work. And that, I did that even before I got clocked by one. Now, that's kind of a nice look. So it's starting to cut off here, which we kind of need to do anyhow. So I was kind of picturing perhaps a cut like this, and then a cut in there just to kind of establish that form. But I like how instead of this just being a circle now, like it's starting to cut into this area, and it's just giving it a little bit more, I guess, sophistication. So I think that the grind on my gouge, I don't even know if I can necessarily explain it. It's just efficient and versatile wood removal. It does not make the nicest cuts, but it can get into a lot of different places and kind of remove wood where I need it to be removed. I don't switch out very much at all. That being said, I do have some that I have a small arsenal of chisels, or gouges and chisels that I use. Okay, I'm going to bring that up just a hair more, and then I think we're ready to try to start establishing those eyes. It's really wiggling.
Powermatic.
What's that?
It's powermatic. You're supposed to think mark if you're standing there still.
Gary, check your headstock, it might be sliding on you.
Loose.
Tighten it down.
Which one is?
Oh,
Yeah, the headstock back here.
Oh, maybe it was that. I didn't even think about that. I honestly didn't even think about that. Thank you. Okay, so now let's establish some eyes in this. I'm thinking, well, obviously, we'll put them like right here. So we'll put them, you know, on this one right here, and then on the same on this side. Now, they're kind of very much on the side of their heads. However, I feel like for one, we can't really get the center across there, and I feel like always a little bit of an X makes it more interesting. So it'll be a pair of points. So that's going to cut right through here. And it's going to cut a little bit into this horn, but we're going to be addressing that horn anyhow, so it'll be fine. Now, this can be a tricky area because you're going to approach the piece of wood almost as if you were turning a bowl, sort of. But you have a tailstock in here. So you're here, but there's a tailstock here. And the tool and kind of your fingers and there's not a lot of real estate. And it gets very grabby right there. And this is still in the way. So if you're not careful, it can grab this tool, and this tool can go in, and then depending on where your fingers are around that tool, your fingers can go in right after it. So when doing this, it's good to be very mindful. Keep the tail and keep your tool handle down pretty low. So if it does catch, it's got to pull it all the way up here and through before this gives out. And the likelihood there is you should be in pretty good shape. Now, I just want to make sure that's really tight. Because what I like to do is essentially bury that center. And I pick wet wood so it will push it all the way in and you get it seated all the way around it. I don't care how ugly the marking is there, I care about it being held in tightly. And now it's not, there's a tiny little gap there, perhaps a paper thin on the one side. That I feel comfortable with because it's really driven in on the other side. But I'm just gonna, okay. And again, we're gonna start real slow.
For those of you that are curious, even though you haven't asked, when he started off with that piece, he started about 500 RPM. He did step up to about 600, 700, and 800 when he was doing the snout. Then he went back down to about 600 when he was doing the last cut.
Yeah, I would say I turn between like 400 and 800.
Yeah.
And really, you will know. I think that'll actually be a pretty nice cut in there. But when you're doing this kind of work, you have to constantly be tightening every little bit of it if it's not bolted down. And even when it is bolted down, you kind of do.
What kind of lathe do you turn on at home?
Bighorn lathe. And I feel that the Powermatics are a good lathe. I do. I can't speak at all to some of the newer, like the American Beauties or anything, but I understand that they run extremely well as also. But I mean, part of why, the wood turning tool has grown the way it has is that, there's new and fun tools that have given us a new ability to kind of explore shape and form and expression. And that's why there's a lot more hobbyists and a lot more people and a lot more artists working with a wood lathe. It's kind of a cool time to be making right now and in the wood field. So we've been kind of lucky with all these advances. I'm very much not a traditionalist in things. Like if there's a brand new tool that just let me press a button somehow and I made something really cool that I designed, I would be okay with that. Or say something like shot in magma. I would also be pretty open to trying that kind of tool because obviously any new tool is I care much more about expression than I do about some romanticized idea of making something with something. Like, I use a wood lathe not because it's difficult to turn animals, for example. It is difficult to turn animals, but I do it because it gives me a very unique, because in truth it's very difficult to carve animals very well also. You know, doing anything very well is difficult. I liked using a lathe because I could make things that just looked a little bit unusual, and I found the way that they looked appealing. So that's why I did it. It's not to make it more difficult on myself, I guess is my point. But I know that some people like to, that difficulty is like a bragging point in some ways, you know, and I've never thought.
Hand planer instead of feeding it through a thickness planer.
Yes, exactly. But now say if you use the hand plane, I think you do still get a slightly different result. And if that result matters to you, then that's important. But I don't think it should ever be because it's more difficult. I think we should use the best tools that we have access to, and however it affects our work is because we care about our results, not the way we're doing it. Now, but that's me. But I'm also not a traditionalist. A traditionalist would disagree, and I would be more than happy to let them have their opinion on that. So I'm just going to take that eye down a little bit more, and then we're going to do the same on the other side. So they kind of have some bulbous eyes. That looks pretty good actually. I'm going to narrow it too. It's too big. Okay, that's better. Now, so as you can see, it's starting to have you know, at each axis it gets a little bit more ram-like. What's that? Or pig-like. Well, I've been seriously thinking about this for a while. The last few demos, I get more and more tempted to get an animal right on the cusp of it being what was asked for, and then right before the demo ends, just kind of work it back into a pig. It would be an all-day demo affair, but I would love to do that someday. Okay, so it's actually right there. And it does need to be perfect, but eyes are very, very important, and if they're really out of whack, it's Picasso. And now, here's the thing, so my work is obviously very abstracted. However, the difference is that I never chose to make my work look as weird as it did. I chose a way to make my work that was a very poor way of doing it. And the machine is the result of why my work looks the way it does, not because I'm making some arbitrary decision on it just being different to look different. No. And I'm not saying that that's all Picasso was doing. I mean, he clearly was a brilliant artist and broke a lot of conventions. But he might have just been doing something because he looked weird, I don't know. Oh, that's Now, the one thing I will say I like about the one-way a little bit better is that the tailstock drives us much, much harder. I mean, I feel like if I have a wrench on mine, and I feel like if I wanted to have these touch through a piece of wood this big, I could just about do it. But the thing is, most other people don't even, they wouldn't need something like that to happen. You know, I use this machine a little bit differently. How am I on time, by the way?
About a half hour.
Now, I think we have a center right here. So this will put a harder line right around here, and it'll actually kind of like, it'll bisect this kind of eye cut here as well, and I think in general it will just look pretty good. So I just took a little cut. I just wanted to see exactly what was happening before I really went more with this, because I had an inkling of what it was going to do, but I just wanted to double check and make sure. Now that's a little tight in there. I could almost get my parting tool out to do that, but it's okay the way it is. Now, I really kind of looked out, because it almost kind of started to establish. So there's kind of a horn, the ear, and it also kind of established the eye. So, I mean, really kind of worked out pretty good. Now we still need to split these horns this way and this way, and then obviously we have to do this eye on this side too, but it's actually coming together. Oh, there you're going to take a look at the moon. But now we have to find this center. So sometimes it can get a little bit tricky just to remember exactly where the centers are, because they do start piling up. So it's there. So it's right back there. So again, kind of like those initial eyes, it's a pair of centers, just to kind of start fleshing out the face and adding detail. Okay, I'm just going to go a little bit farther. Good. Now, we need to separate the horns from the head here, and then also like V it out here. Does that make sense? So I mean, it's really just kind of looking at the piece and like figuring out where there's mass that you do not want, and then getting rid of it. So like I said, we're just going to cut right in through here, and we kind of keep everything else out of the way. Now, I want to make sure that's, again, really driven in there, because that's a part where I'm going to have to stand reasonably directly in front of it.
Have you ever cracked the wood while you're trying to tighten it?
Yeah, and it's why you have to use wet woods, because if you don't, it will, like if you were to try to do this in like ebony, I mean, you'd have it cracked. I mean, it would honestly be splinters. Even a dry maple is a kind of a nightmare. Just a little bit more. I do think that this can be a little bit hard on these lathes. Just the tightening, like the amount of tightening I have to do for these.
Do you ever have to go back to previous axes?
Sure. Less so now than when I started, but certainly. And, you know, I leave them on the piece, again, in the same way that I leave the tool marks, is that it's not just to kind of be flippant about rules that people say makes for a good turning. It's really just because people did not believe these forms were turned for a very long time. And as I started leaving the tool marks and the centers all over it, they had to wrap their head around the fact that that is clear proof that it was turned, but they had, it forces them to accept how it was made, you know? And I kind of like the authenticity of it. And that's as the steps right there go right there. And I'm just going to keep going with that. So this is just more of a traditional spindle gouge with a shower bevel. Now, I'm just going to do the same thing on the other side. And now I could have just turned it on the other side, but again, I just feel like so many times it's easier to just turn it on this side. I didn't mean to get much quieter, I want to make sure that I get this piece done, and I need to focus a little bit more on the shapes. Because the one thing that's kind of difficult about this demonstration is that if it doesn't look like a bighorn by the time I'm done, well then it's firewood. Okay, just a little bit higher on them. There's this weird little part that started developing right under the under the eye socket because of this particular center. And I think it's kind of an interesting look, and I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do with it. Right here. Now, I feel like we need to also split this part here.
I have to say, in my 80 years plus watching hundreds and hundreds of demonstrations, you're the first and the master of offset turning. My only problem is I don't have imagination enough. I wouldn't know whether that thing's straight up or upside down. Wonderful job. I'm sure it's worth more now than it was when it was fired.
Well, that might be debatable, but I'm glad that I got it to, I'm glad your estimation is better than it was.
Well, in North Dakota last week or a couple weeks ago, in the meet and greet, I said how my first turning I did when I was in high school 45 years ago. And then during the closing ceremony, Roper he goes, yeah, he goes, I didn't realize I was in the presence of greatness. He goes, hell, Doug's been turning longer than I've been alive. That made me feel real good.
Well, I will say, I used to start my demonstration saying, you know, I might be the worst turner you guys will ever see. And I said it the one time, and no one, so I break a lot of rules, and that's why I said it. But the one place I said it, no one cracked a smile, nothing. They just looked at me like, okay, well, why are we here? I thought, there was no big caveat to that demonstration. They could have asked for the Mona Lisa, and I would have turned it that day. I thought, boy, I really dug myself into a big one this time. Now, again though, there is a little bit of a suspension this work does not look realistic. It is just, this is going to look pretty much like a pronghorn compared to, say, a bowl, you know? Like this machine is not made, it can't make things realistically. And I think that's kind of the fun part for people when they, because a lot of times they won't even necessarily see what it is until they like look at it for a minute and they go, oh, you know what, that does really remind me of X.
It's cycle denial. After enough margaritas, it's gonna look just like it.
I forgot all about that. I should demonstrate more often on Cinco de Mayo or New Year's. Well, people like drinking in general, you know. What I should really do is I should just bring some, I'll have their shot glasses and have some whiskey, and then you can sit and enjoy my demo. And then I won't have to get nearly as stressed about the outcome. What's that? I forgot all about that, you're right. Why was I worried about it here? No, you guys have been really great. And the funny thing is, so the person that taught me to turn, he sold me his lathe, and he taught a lot of people to turn in my area. And he really respected what I was doing, but he would probably also still agree that it might just be firewood. He gave me a hard time for a long time about it.
Who was it? What's his name?
Dave Hardy.
Oh, yeah.
He just passed. But he did a lot for, he did an unbelievable amount for the Turners in Pennsylvania. I think that most of these clubs end up having people that, you know, just cared and were generous and gave a lot. I mean, I bet just about any place in the country you go that has someone like that behind it. All right, I'll take that just a little bit more. So what I've done, what I did the last time during that demonstration, so I never worry about when something's cutting like that at home. I'm just worried about getting the wood out of the way eventually. But now in a demonstration, I got stressed when it's a very interrupted cut. It's banging down the tool hard, and it's hard to get, without going faster, it's hard to get that smooth cutting. And so on top of just walking a little bit and it being an old lathe, I did crank the speed up because I really didn't want people to have to suffer through that kind of clunking. And I mean, but that's when the piece came flying. So I hope you can bear with me on the occasional stops on a setting like this. Because I don't know if I can take another shot at them. I still kind of want, what's our time at?
Got about 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Okay, let me do I'm going to touch this now a little tiny bit. I'd almost really like to, no, probably can't. I just don't want to get rid of what's there because it looks good already. Actually, maybe. I think if we just kind of, if we could separate this part here, I think it would look really good. And then after these axes, I'm going to pull out my Arbor Tech and show you just a little bit of an additional detailing that I do. So sometimes when you're doing this, you can use a marker and just really show yourself exactly where your high point is. So it's going to come in here. I think I can get away with that. Let's just see. This is one of those little vortex tools. I think this in particular is a Stuart Batty design. I think Cindy Draws also makes ones that are very similar. They're just like a point. And I thought they were just these really kind of finessey little tools that were not suited for this type of work. But what I found is because they're just a point, you can stick them in anywhere and they don't catch and they do kind of cut. So it's a very unique tool, and I've learned to like it a lot. It's kind of separating it a little bit more. That's one of those times where it's just like, you really look out. So it was cutting through here, and it started cutting. Can you zoom in on? Can you see that? So see how it started cutting right there? It just added like another little like nostril detail. Just it's really nice when things work out that way. I'm just going to go to the Arbor Tech to give myself the time to just add just a few more details to this piece. Just so you see, I mean, you would not have thought that that was just a purely turn form, would you, by now? And the Arbortech I use, so the Arbortech is this really powerful rotary cutting machine. It's like an angle grinder. And I use it not at all to remove wood quickly or anything, even though it does. I use it as a circular stamp that if I wanted to, say, build a jig and turn a form wherever I wanted, I could. But instead of building a jig, I can just put this little cutting machine wherever the heck I want. And I just use that for little tiny details on the form. So it stays in that circular language, but it just makes things much, much easier. So, and now apparently, so Cindy is the one that fixes all of these Powermatics, is that accurate?
Nice.
What's that?
The stop is what he's asking about.
Is Cindy the one that fixes all these?
Oh, that I don't know.
Nowhere else in the country.
Is that Ron's?
No one else in the country has those Powermatics. So normally, on a Powermatic lathe, their indexing wheel doesn't have a lock on it. And so normally I have to ask someone to come up and hold this button for me. Here is the only place that both clubs have the ability to lock it. It's been fixed. And apparently Cindy was the one that was the fixer of them. So like I have to thank her. So I really use a wood lathe as kind of like a clamp too.
Would you hold the blade you got closer to the camera?
You bet.
Look at that?
You bet.
I can zoom in on it.
So it's just it's a grinder. I don't use the blade. It's much less grippy. And the perk to this is so the lines that this cut saw makes, it's almost inseparable from the concentric cut marks that the lathe leaves on the form too. So they really work very well together. And again, I do not use it. You can see I'm trying to put as unmoving a cut on this as I possibly can. I really just want a circular shape added to the form. I'm not going to get too carried away with it because it really doesn't need it. But, so the other step that I always do on a piece, the fire alarms will go, I just...
We need to leave anyway, so if you do go back.
Give all your stuff on.
Yeah, just leave stuff on the table.
So, this has a couple of different benefits. For one, it sets off all of these little cut marks on the piece, and it kind of makes the whole form pop. And on top of that, it cleans the surface up a whole lot, and makes it, it's much easier to apply paint. and I'm pretty sure that I avoided the pig. Because you know why? It would smell much different.
Does smell like a fireplace.
What's that?
Does smell like a fireplace.
Doesn't smell like bacon though. So it's very wet, and it's just taking a little bit to actually char. I mean, you have to like burn off all that water, and then it actually starts charring it. But then, so after all of this, I then go back. I don't sand because I feel like sanding actually. There was a time where I was actually like turning these forms and then carving a whole new skin on them. And then I'd spend about 30 or 40 hours doing that, and then realize I actually liked all of those lines that were on it that I just spent all that time taking off. So the way that I resolve these is first I torch them, and then I go back with a pyographer, like a little pyography unit, and I just burn all the lines. But I would say that's pretty reasonably. You can pass it around, or I can leave it while we just pass around. Thank you guys so much, and if you have any questions, please feel free.
Okay. Thank you, Jerry. Great demo.
Thank you.